In the Gun, episode number 57 here of your new favorite WVU football podcast. Wesley Uhler with the best teammates in the business. I've got the signal caller, Jed Drenning, the runaway beer truck, Owen Schmitt, and as always, this episode of ITG brought to you in part by our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. So head to the website or use your mobile device today to sign up and get in on the action, and use the promo code Bleav when you sign up for a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's BLEAV at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, gentlemen, so much to get to here. Let's jump right into it. We have to start with a topic that, I mean, I'll just be honest with you guys and with our listeners. I'm not looking forward to talking about this, but we would also be remiss, I think, as a WVU podcast if we didn't discuss the biggest WVU story right now and arguably the biggest WVU story in a couple years. And that, of course, is the resignation of head coach, longtime head coach Bob Huggins, former Mountaineer basketball player, basketball Hall of Famer Bob Huggins. I don't think I need to lay out the timeline for anybody, but just in case you've been living under a rock and you've missed it, 6 weeks ago, Bob Huggins went on Cincinnati radio, said some things that I'm sure he, would like to have taken back. There was some conversation with him, the university, the powers that be, Ren Baker, Gordon Gee, on down the list. But he was allowed to stay as head coach with some reduced salary and some other things in there as well, too. And then this past weekend in Pittsburgh, Bob Huggins being charged with driving under the influence after an incident in downtown Pittsburgh. And then just shortly after that, I think the next day or maybe 2 days later, announcing that he had resigned as head coach of the WVU men's basketball program, where he had been for nearly 2 decades. So we got to get some thoughts on this. Jed, I feel like you're usually pretty good leading us off with this kind of stuff. So go ahead. Around campus, Bob Huggins, no longer the head coach, and now obviously a search is ongoing, as we know.
Well, nobody wanted to land here. We thought we, stepped around a potential landmine just a handful of weeks ago, the last time we were discussing Coach Huggins. And what's, I don't know if I want to use the word tragic with the crazy things going on in the world today, but what's sad about it is no matter how you stack it, no matter how you view it, it's self-inflicted. I mean, this was so easily avoidable, right? And I mean, everybody wanted to see what he might do with this group of guys that he brought in. That's why we were so terribly excited to have survived, the last dust up. But it's the fact that it could have been avoided so easily, and the fact that it's self-inflicted, and just what a brilliant career comes to this kind of a finish, this kind of an end. And it's very unfortunate. And, and then we saw somebody released the old video in the last couple of days, the music video looking back on his career. And it's just, it just yanks at you, man. It yanks at you. You can see how emotional Hugs always got. It was genuine. It was off the cuff when he talked about what it meant to return to his alma mater, when he talked about what West Virginia meant to him, the $17 million that he raised for the cancer center. We discussed that at length the last time we were discussing him, right? There's more to him than Bob Huggins, the basketball coach. Again, to me, irrespective of his shortcomings and mistakes, and this was a glaring one, but irrespective of all that, part of him will always be the guy that's put my wife in a better place when we go into the cancer center at WVU for treatment. And he's improved a lot of people's lives in that respect. But again, this is so incredibly avoidable, and yet it still happened. We're still dealing with it. Some kind of action was forced. No matter how you weigh in, you have to recognize this didn't need to happen. This conversation didn't need to take place. And yet, because of how things unfolded that were, I mean, I have no reason to believe they weren't completely within his control, right? But there's no doubt about it. Everybody has priorities in their life, right? And, there's little doubt that anybody who knows Hugs, and I just know him in passing, couldn't really say I know him, to be honest with you. I just have mutual friends, and I've kind of met him a number of times in passing, but spent a little bit of time with him. But those in the know will tell you, look, his priorities are his family, his basketball program, his school, obviously his state. You can't spend 30 seconds around him without recognizing what West Virginia means to him. But which makes this the sad story that it is. It's one more situation where he said family members come forward and say things. You guys were talking about that with me. I get that. You're going to have a natural inclination to want to defend those you love. I get it. But it's always sad because part of me is thinking, man, he didn't want to see his family yanked into this, and it's bad enough that he's dealing with it. But anyway, I'm just kind of talking nonsensically. I wish there was more structure to what I could say here, guys. But Owen,
it just sucks.
Just a sad day,
you don't have to sugarcoat it. It just sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. Yeah.
Damn it, man.
Good response. Good response. That's a second damn it, man, in a little over a month, right?
That's what sucks about it is it was, no matter how you feel, if you were somebody that thought he, should have been forced out 6 weeks ago, if you're somebody that thinks he should still be the head coach now, I think we should all agree that it was avoidable. And that's what I think makes it even tougher to swallow. I mean, his last game as head coach at WVU was a first round of the NCAA tournament where the team had a chance to beat Maryland on a buzzer beater and the shot didn't fall. That's how he goes out. Hey, I guess there's worse ways to go out, but Hugs should have had that final game at the Coliseum where he gets to wave to the crowd and there's 15,000 people there going nuts, and the proper goodbye, the proper send off.
Farewell tour. Yeah.
The farewell tour. Exactly. That the Roy Williams and the Mike Krzyzewskis and some of these coaches have gotten, and you'll see Bill Self get that one day, and John Calipari get that one day. I'm sure as well too. This is, while it's not nearly as egregious, it's kind of the only parallel. It's kind of like the Joe Paterno. You know what I mean? Like there's no real goodbye. It's just one day he's the head coach and the next day he's gone. Again, I'm not comparing those situations because they are completely different. Yeah. But I just mean a fan base that truly loves somebody who has been invested for decades and doesn't get to say goodbye. That part sucks, obviously, for Bob Huggins, but it sucks for the fans too that don't get to say goodbye to him.
One of the good old boys, Wes.
Yeah. And that's the thing, Owen, you just touched on it there. I don't know if there's we would have to sit and think about this for a few minutes, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find another head coach in major college sports who represents their program, who fits their program better than Bob Huggins.
Yeah.
He's West Virginia through and through. His personality, his work ethic, his dedication, his loyalty, which is why I think this has torn so many Mountaineer fans, kind of fractured some of the fan base in arguing about this, because I think if you're listing the best adjectives of West Virginians, their friendliness and their loyalty is at the top of that list. And it really stings to see somebody go like this. So again, final thing I'll say, and then if you guys have anything else you can, if not, we'll kind of move on to our other topics here. But I think if you're reasonable in this conversation, again, no matter where you are on the whether you want Bob Huggins here still, whether you think he should have been given another opportunity, whether you think he should have been gone 6 weeks, wherever you're at in all of this, I think most reasonable people can agree that driving drunk, what's happened, let's just say what's happened in the last 6 weeks with Huggins, right? Yeah. It does not erase all the good that he's done in your life, as that he's done in his life, I should say, as you've referenced, Jed. I also think, though, right, the other side of that equation is that all the good that Bob Huggins has done in his life and for the university and for the state doesn't make you immune from consequences of your own actions, particularly driving around in a city, when your blood alcohol content is that high and you're not able to answer the police officer which city and which state you're in. So
you forever will now have a Yabbit. There's a Yabbit attached to, right? Oh, yep. Bob Huggins.
And I don't think like I said, it does not erase everything he has done in his life. It certainly doesn't. But all that great that he has done in his life also doesn't make him immune from consequences either. That's I think the reasonable, thought process.
It's a marriage of two unique things, and I think you just hit on it, Wes. First, West Virginia is a unique place and a unique brand. Owen, you've spoken about this far better than I could previously on the podcast about the relationship between West Virginia fans and the brand, the Flying WV, is unique for a host of reasons, one of which there's no pro team in the market. We are the pro team. We are the college team, irrespective of whether you graduated from WVU or never attended a class at WVU. The Mountaineers are going to mean something to you if you're from the Mountain State. But what makes us a little different maybe than some of the other states that don't have a pro brand, whether it's Arkansas, wherever it might be, is typically the only time growing up in West Virginia that you see your name mentioned nationally is for bad news. It's not for good news, except when Owen and Pat White are lifting the Fiesta Bowl trophy, except when Bob Huggins is taking us to the Final Four. It's the one time on the national stage, or those very rare times, that your chest swells with the pride that it always should to be a West Virginian because of the sports relationship, because the relationship that the sports teams have with the fans and the people of the state. And when you take that unique part of it and bring in how unique Hugs is as somebody who grew up here, who played here, coached here, reveres those fans like they revere him, those two things together create this once in a lifetime marriage, right? That makes this feel so hurtful the way it's played out. But as you touched on, Wes, that said, by any reasonable measure, this is unacceptable conduct and it cannot be tolerated. You can't have a university that represents a state. And part of this is about, like, when you get into the criminal justice system, for example, and that's not to say this is deep into that. It's not my point. I'm using an analogy. The criminal justice system is based on setting deterrents. There's a specific deterrent to specifically deter one person from doing something again, but there's also a general deterrent to deter society at large from doing something because they see what happens when someone commits an infraction like that. Well, if you're a university, you have to establish some precedent of deterrence. We don't accept DUIs. Just understand that. You don't push the envelope and think there's going to be 2 or 3 or 4, and at some point that'll be too many. I mean, you have to establish precedent somehow, some way, right? And as a university that represents the state, and that's what makes it so hurtful, is Hugs was most prideful when he recognized he was representing the state. But I think, guys, maybe in closing, and I want to get your thoughts on this too, Owen, I have the Vegas odds for the front runners because I'm not going to pretend to know. I'm not a basketball insider by any means. But let's quickly run through some of the names that Vegas is tossing out there. We have some other names that are being mentioned, and then I'm going to throw an outside the box thought, a way outside the box thought at you guys and see what you think about that. But okay, let's start with this. The front runner, according to Vegas, at plus 400, which means he has 20% odds, Ben McCollum of a Division II program in Missouri, but he has done one heck of a job, winning almost 81% of his games. He's only 42 years old. He's already established himself as an up-and-comer. Quick thoughts on Ben McCollum, then we'll work our way down through the list.
Are we not trying to I feel like we're getting away from what we're trying to do with that.
Fry a big fish?
Yeah.
As I understand it, Wren has reached out first and foremost to the kind of the dream list, the wish list, the people he knew would say no, but he made them say no anyway. So he's doing that as well. That's
right.
I understand it.
Right.
He's reaching out to the big names.
Would Jay Wright come for a couple of years? Would John Beeline take the job for a year? Yeah.
Or even some retired Hall of Famers.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. Roy Williams, would he come for a year?
There you go.
Yeah.
So he's making those calls as well. But anyway, Ben McCollum is first on the list. Then you go to Jared.
Jed, just real quick, my only concern with Ben McCollum is he's won 4 national championships at the D2 level.
Yeah.
Why isn't someone giving him a shot yet? Why is he still available for WVU to take it this? That's just my. Sure, but he's won 4 national championships. Wouldn't some Power 5 program have taken? I know, but wouldn't some?
I think I told you
even a mid-major have taken a chance on him?
What's interesting to me is this would mean Wren would go in a direction with the men's program that he chose not to go with the women's program with Kim Stevens.
Correct.
Tim Stevens basically built Glenville State at the Division II level,
which is why I don't know
right
if
down
I
the road,
like
exactly the way Ben McCollum
surprises me that Ben
program.
McCollum is the favorite here, because you're right. It feels like if Wren was going to go this direction, he would have done so with the lady who was right down the road in West Virginia.
So who knows? But that's what Vegas says. Jared Calhoun, number 2 in terms of odds, 16.7% chance at plus 500. He's at Youngstown State, of course, Fairmont State history, has a local history there. He's only 41 years old. He was a student assistant on Hugg's staff at Cincy. Yep. There's some history there. It depends if you want to detach yourself from Hugg's or not. But any thoughts on Jared Calhoun?
He's done well to bring Youngstown State back to relevance, which is a tough at their back. It's a football school through and through. I lived in Youngstown for a year and a half, so I spent a lot of time around that school and that campus. My only concern is that he's had one, I would call it, really good season there. It's not like it's a body of 3-4 years work. I would still like to see him prove it for another couple years.
Pat Kelsey, College of Charleston. His odds stand at plus 525, which give him 16% according to Vegas. He's 48 years old. For his career, he's won 67%. How strange or ironic would it be, guys, to see an Xavier grad hired as the replacement for Bob? He's an Xavier grad.
There'd be some irony there for sure.
Now you get into, according to Vegas, the internal hires or the internal possibilities.
Yeah.
Listed at plus 550, 15.4% chance are both Ron Everhart and Josh Eilert. Any thoughts on an internal hire to maybe keep the class together or some level of continuity, whatever it might mean?
Yeah, that could work. I mean, that's the familiar face, I guess, kind of something you would just do as far as keeping it in the locker room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad idea, but I don't know the team well enough as far as how the coaching staff I'm sure they're all there, but we just got some big time recruits too, so what do they want to see? It's hard to really tell there.
When it's not even really analogous, Wes, to like a Bill Stewart thing, right?
Yeah,
right.
There was
that happened at the very end of the season as well too. Yeah. It wasn't months after the season ended.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's where I'm at, guys. I struggle with this because all the coaches that make no mistake about this, and I don't want to sound crass saying this, but it's just reality. The coaches that are still available to WVU right now on June 21st, as we record this, June 22nd when it drops tomorrow, they're still available for a reason. Andy Kennedy at UAB has been another name that's been tossed around a lot, and he won an SEC he won an SEC championship at Ole Miss. He's had success at UAB. There's a reason he wasn't hired by somebody back in March and April when the season ended and when this whole process goes along. It would be like if the Kansas City Chiefs fired Andy Reid today. It ain't going to happen, right? But just roll with me on this one. If the Kansas City Chiefs fired Andy Reid today, you wouldn't like the candidates that you were choosing from, because all the best candidates, those jobs cycle in January and February and March. It's kind of the same thing here. Is there stuff that you can like about all these candidates? Certainly, but I also think there's a reason why none of them were nabbed for bigger jobs in this past recruiting cycle as well.
Which is a good opportunity to point one thing out, Wes, and you're on to something here. First of all, Andy Kennedy, odds plus 1,000, about a 9% chance according to Vegas. It's a guy, cup of coffee with Hugs as a younger coach. Okay. Yep. Played under Jim Valvano at NC State before transferring to UAB to play under Gene Bartow, some big names. Mm-hmm. So he's learned from some of the greats, right?
He probably has some nice recommendation letters with his resume.
Network and a Rolodex there for you young listeners who don't know what a Rolodex is. But one of the winningest coaches at Ole Miss when he stepped down, has done a great job at UAB. But here's what a point I was going to make, guys. I would argue, I think it's pretty obvious to me, the West Virginia basketball job is a better basketball job than the West Virginia football job is a football job. Let's start with this. It's in the SEC of basketball. The Big 12 is the SEC of basketball, period. Okay.
And it pays its head coach a top 10 salary in the sport.
Absolutely. So if you are a top tier coach and your head's on a swivel for certain jobs, it's going to start with the jobs in the SEC of basketball. Now, the football job's not in the SEC of football. It's in the Big 12. Okay, we're clamoring to get to number 3, jockeying for that number 3 position in terms of football conferences, right? Mm-hmm. And the other point would be, from an NIL standpoint, And we keep hearing this noise that we're cranking it out and doing better than some expect. In football, you don't have the money to sign 24 guys like you need to have the overhaul.
Basketball, you get 2 or 3 and you're in great shape.
4. It's 10 guys in shorts. A couple of the key guys can make a difference. So it's a very appealing basketball job. Yeah. Okay. Now, what's interesting to me, there's 1 or 2 other names mentioned there. And obviously, Wes, you and I talk for the reasons that Mazzola, come on, he has a new contract.
No chance.
4-7 or so a year. One of the best jobs in all of sports. It's unrealistic. Okay. The field. This is what's interesting to me. In other words, Vegas is saying the field has plus 650 odds, a 13% chance. So in effect, they're saying anyone not listed, right?
Right.
So anybody you can come up with that's not on this list has a 13% chance. I don't know. For all I know, maybe it is somebody off this list. But I'm going to give you a crazy thought. Of course, it's not going to happen. I just think it's fun fodder to talk about. All right. We're West Virginia with a bottom third budget, looking for top third results. We got to think way outside the box. You want outside the box? I'm going to give you outside the box. Bob Huggins' salary was $4.2 million. What if we become the first player-led team in the modern era of NCAA sports and take that $4.2 million on the open market?
Go buy some more.
Bill Russell was a player coach for the Celtics and won 2 championships in the late 60s. Lenny Wilkins was a player coach. Bob Cousy was a player coach. Back in the early days of the NFL, Curly Lambeau, George Halas. This is basketball. It's a sport that maybe, if any, lends itself to that. Now, again, I like the idea of keeping the Ron Everharts around, okay? I mean, in some capacity, you got to have some guys
that would get you back in the headlines.
Right?
That would get you back in the headlines.
Player-led team, so you can take $4 million of salary and offer it up on the open market and see what it attracts. Don't you think you'd be stealing players from Kansas with $4 million of NIL money tossed out there?
Probably.
I'm just trying to be fun here.
That's funny.
Anyway,
I still, guys, if
that's a good deal to me.
Outside the box, baby.
If I'm Ren Baker, and hey, Ren, you could slide in my DMs. I'll give you my phone number if you want some help. If I'm Ren Baker, I'm looking for an interim to keep the team together and guide us through this season, because everything that you just laid out, it's a top 10 paying job in the best basketball conference in the country with one of the best.
To be a good job. Yes.
With one of the best facilities in the country, practice facilities and historic stadiums. And as you mentioned, you can legitimately say, hey, you come here, you get the right roster every 5 to 10 years or so, right? When we think we really have a chance to go after it, we'll give you the hold on. No, but you're right. Okay, yeah. Well, okay, sure. For 1 year, that's I'm good with anything for 1 year.
Next hiring cycle next.
As long, yeah, that to me is still the smart play.
This is a new way to reinvent college sports, and it works. But anyway,
listen, you're going to be able to, and again, this is no disrespect to the coaches that are mentioned around the job right now, who could all end up being fine hires.
Yeah,
you're going to be in a better position to attract somebody come March or April. There's going to be a bigger pool of candidates. You're currently paying your head coach top 10. Great facilities. Jed, as you mentioned, this is basketball, and you can sit them down and you can say, hey, every few years when you think you really have a chance to go after it and make a Final Four and make a run, we're going to get you the money you need to add that extra player or two, because we've done that. And in basketball, that's feasible for us. We don't need to go out and get a dozen dudes. We need to get 2, maybe 3. And whenever you prove that you have the right core there, we'll give you that influx of money. And every, like election cycle, every couple of years, we're going to go for it when we think that we really have a team.
What do you think it means to have guys in prominent positions in the NBA? Again, a guy sitting in the chair of one of the best head coaching jobs in all of sports in Boston, that is a former Mountaineer, a guy sitting in a prominent front office chair in Cleveland, guys in meaningful positions in the NBA who are Zooming these kids, giving them reasons, okay, why to keep this team together, why to keep this roster together. Don't you think that has some meaning and merit as well?
I do.
From a networking standpoint?
Yeah, I absolutely do. But I think as well, too, at times, listen, we all know it's tough to get decisions made at West Virginia, because you have the pressure of the state and some people in the government in the state who have historically put their hands in the athletic department pile too often. You've got a lot of boosters. You've got a lot of alumni. I mean, I'm sure Ren Baker's job is not easy right now, because he's probably got his boosters telling him who they want him to hire. He's got his players telling him who they want him to hire. And he's got guys like Joe Mazzulla and Mike Gansey and Johnny West, who are doing jobs at the highest level in the NBA, that are probably pitching candidates as well too. So
I first thought it was an 85-year-old Jerry West.
It's a help, Jed. And you always want that network of guys who have gone on to great things in your sport and in your business. You always want that brotherhood, that fraternity. But at the same time, I really hope these people are letting Ren Baker do his job, because we've seen that play out in West Virginia a few times in our past. One entity who is helping do their job is our friends at Toothman Ford. All right. I saw them just posting before we recorded this with some of the WVU basketball players about how we're keeping this team together and we got some NIL stuff rolling. So a big shout out to Toothman Ford. As always, make sure you're getting your butt to Grafton and supporting the people who do so much to support WVU athletics, because we all know cars cost less in Grafton. Speaking of Mountaineers at the professional ranks, Jed, couple former Mountaineers, couple notable names signing on with the Pittsburgh Steelers in the last few days.
It's always fun, when you dabble in the NFL. I'm a Steeler fan at the pro level anyway. But Nick Kwiatkowski, recent signee with the Steelers, recent signing his contract with the Steelers. Rex Sunahara. Now, this has kind of been under the radar. I've always been a Rex guy. All right. He's a fun personality. He's a fun kid. He's an easy kid to pull for. But when you look at the history of these two kids who are going to be in camp right up the road where you work, Wes, first of all, I think it could be interesting. Are the Steelers getting a bargain with Quit? Could he reinvent himself? This is a guy who did big things with the Bears, enough to make some money with the Raiders, ended up with the Falcons. So he's coming down the stretch of his NFL career, kind of the twilight of his NFL career. Yeah. But that kind of veteran leadership in that linebacker room, not just to provide depth for the Steelers, but from a special teams standpoint, that's the type of guy that gets it. He was a special teams contributor when he was at West Virginia. That hasn't stopped. I would love to see that work out. I'm excited about it. I think he's a kid. I still call him a kid, but I think he's a kid with a lot of potential upside. And again, Southwest PA roots, so to some extent he's coming home. But Rex Sunahara, one of the tallest, longest long snappers you ever see at 6'6", but a family very familiar to West Virginia fans, obviously, him and his dad as well. But he had a tryout during OTAs earlier this month. We've talked about it, Wes. You've kind of seen him in and out of Steelers camps in the past.
Yeah, he's been at camps and OTAs and stuff in the past. Yeah,
this seems like a legitimate shot for him, and we know how these things with these long snappers can go. Listeners out there, if you want to train your kid, okay, for a low contact, low risk, potentially high yield career in professional sports, am I right? I mean, train them to knock a beer
Teach
can
them how to
off
snap
the
that
post
football
at 15 to 18 yards consistently. Rex Sunahara is that guy. So I'd like to see it stick, and I'd like to see him in black and gold for the next decade. But Owen, that's a skill set that is undervalued until there's a bad snap, right?
Well, absolutely. When I was with the Raiders, I really started focusing on long snapping after practice and building that skill up. I had done it for since I had gotten in, because I just knew, it's always good to kind of let the special teams coach know you can kind of do a couple of those oddball gigs. Like I'd always kick and I'd always punt and mostly do a bunch of long snapping, but just to let them know. And we actually had a situation when I was playing for the Raiders where our long snapper went down, and it was really a toss-up between a linebacker and me. And they went with the linebacker. Unfortunately, snap rolled on the ground, and he got canned the next day.
Well, of course. So this happened late in the game.
He got canned the next day, dude. I was like,
so the injury happened late in the game.
That could have been me. That could have been me. Or,
revisit this. When did the injury?
One back there, and you're like, I've sealed my fate as a long snapper.
I was going to say, or Owen, it could have gone well for you, and you could still be in the league right now.
I can still be playing, dude. I can still be playing.
Owen, what was it early in the game that the long snapper was lost, or late in the game?
Man, it was
Owen doesn't remember that.
See, here's what I'm asking. If this happened,
it was around halftime or something. Or I don't know, when he went in. But anyways, all I remember is he went down, and I'm telling you, I was like, oh man. Literally in the back of my head, I'm like, I could squeeze 3-4 more years out of this gig right now.
See, that's why I'm asking. Was there a long snap in that game after he dribbled that one back? That's why I'm asking.
We never punted again.
Game in like that.
I don't think we punted again.
Okay.
But I'm telling you, the next day he was gone ski.
That might have been your moment. Yeah.
Like they tossed him away. I mean, that's how cutthroat the league is, though, too. I mean, it's more you can do. A lot of us, well, really, fullbacks are, oh man, like few and far between now. You know what I mean? Like a true fullback. But those guys got to be. I bet Kwiatkowski can. I bet he can launch snap. I guarantee he knows that skill. You know what I mean?
So do you remember, Owen, who your special teams coach was? Do you remember
that? Where?
When this happened? It was with the Raiders, right?
With the Raiders. Ah, man.
I don't know if it was somebody we might have heard of.
I'd have to look him up. It's you feel bad, but really the guy was only with me for,
See, I'm dying to know, like, what would have happened?
And then it was like done. It was like, oh, great.
See, here's what I'm playing out my mind.
I really he really fought for me on the table there.
Here's what I want to know. Let's say this happened with 9 minutes left in the game. He dribbles his snap back and they fired him. Okay. Well, if there was another long snap with 3 minutes to go, was he going back in, or was it you?
That's what I
want to know. It was going to be me, dude.
Oh, wow.
It was going to be me. And I was like, fucking hell, dude, this is your chance, bro. This is your one shot, dude. I'm telling you, something like that, because I could still run and make I mean, I contributed on special teams. So that was my gig. That's how
so did they sign
even lasted as long as I did. You know what I mean? Huh?
What'd they do to seal the position that week? Did they make a waiver move? What'd they do?
No. He was a special team
probably had
guy.
On the practice squad.
Backup linebacker.
This is fascinating.
You know what I mean?
This is an episode, right?
Oh, dude, backup linebacker.
And we got to research it to see who it was against.
And listen, I thought I was going to be the one to do it. I legit thought I was like, I thought I was going to do it.
You were ready. You were mentally prepared.
I was against,
dude. I was like, this. I'm telling you, this one play is going to define my second contract, dude. Like, if I make this happen, this is what it's all come down to, dude. Putting the time in, because I mean, I'd be religious about it after every practice, dude.
Who was this against?
You'd be at home doing it. I mean, that's a skill you can practice whenever you want. So
Jed's gonna be up till 3 a.m. trying to find this tape now.
That one moment, dude. I'll get it I'll look it up.
Oh. Well,
first thing I found was a Behind the Shield with Owen Schmitt from Raiders.com. But anyway, go ahead.
There you go. Maybe he talks about it specifically on there. But yes, we'll be 5 weeks from now. I'll be out in sunny Latrobe, Pennsylvania with Rex, with Nick at Steelers training camp. So hopefully I'll have some good updates for you. Hey, you know what? It's good. Blaine Stewart was always there in the past. Blaine's down in Morgantown. I get some new Mountaineers sliding in here, so I'm not alone against all these stinking Pitt Panthers. So let's go make a roster for Rex and for Nick here. That's wear whatever hat I want. Dang it. This episode of ITG also brought to you in part by our friends at GoMart. Make sure you're signing up for your GoMart rewards as you travel throughout the Mountain State and onward. GoMart here to keep you going. Jed, Mountaineers at the next level with some opportunities and maybe some next up Mountaineers. This is the time of year where we always kind of turn it over to you to give us a little recruiting update on what's moving and shaking since we last recorded.
Which this is kind of on the breaking news front. We have acquired a producer for this here show. Okay. Woo! And our producer also happens to be a recruiting specialist.
The more hats you can wear.
More hats you can wear. Speaking of versatility, when he's learning the long snap as well. But we're going to be working with Skylar Callahan's going to be doing some stuff with us. And he posted something recently. He and I were exchanging texts this morning, and he was in a car accident recently, him and his wife. And so we're wishing the best to them. But Skylar is at some point in the near future is going to be on the production side doing some things with us behind the scenes, but we'll also have him in front of the camera at times to discuss recruiting. Times like this are critical. I mean, you're coming out of camps. Things tend to happen in bunches. We have now 13 commitments for this 24 class. Yeah. I'm not going to get granular on the who and the where, but we're addressing multiple positions, and depending on which grade you look at, some of these rankings have us number 2 in the Big 12 at this point with 13 commits, and the overall ranking grade at floating like number 2 behind Texas Tech, who's also with Joey McGuire doing a nice job on the recruiting trail. But I think it speaks more so than anything to there's good health in the brand equity of what the staff is selling. Okay. In other words, we all recognize how critical the upcoming season is for a litany of reasons, right? Not a litany of reasons, a litany of reasons. But we all recognize this is a very critical season for Neil Brown and the staff. But at the same time, in the crosshairs, with all this pressure to have a successful season with this difficult schedule, they're still able to sell the brand to the point that on the recruiting front, it's resonating with these student athletes, Owen. I mean, it's difficult to stay focused enough with all this pressure coming from so many directions, but that's part of the job. And they've done a very good job of checking that box and keeping the flow of talent coming in more so than going out. So, I mean, we're, edging out some big name schools, whether it's the Michigans or the SECs of the world, or the Ohio States. One of the big names that we recently, and this is way out in the class of 2026, this just happened. We've discussed him in the past, Slim Jr., Chris Henry's kid. So he's in the class of 26. But anyway,
right around the corner.
Right around the corner. It's crazy how far out you go with some of these recruiting stories these days. But the long and the short of it is recruiting's going well. Camps in recent weeks have been very productive. There's been a lot of talent in town performing in front of the staff. Some offers have been made, and some commitments have been made, and it's going really well, especially under the circumstances. Again, if you're looking for this thing to fray and fall apart, it's not going to happen from the inside out. And so that's a very good sign of the health of the program. So now if you can follow it up, with some production on the field and some of the results that we're hoping for, and that's the way it's going to need to work. But right now, those are a couple things I wanted to mention. First, Skylar's going to be working with us in multiple capacities. Skylar Callahan, you guys know him from some of his previous work on the recruiting front and on the on the podcast front. He has his own brand that he deals with the
he's got a great following.
Does some good work with the Panthers. But you'll be hearing a lot more from Skylar, especially on the recruiting front, but just West Virginia at large, and with ITG at large. He's excited about the partnership and excited about the role that he's going to be playing. So that's kind of some breaking news. And some other breaking news, I'll leave it with this so you can jump into the final segment, Wes. We've been talking about upcoming guests throughout the course of the off season. Well, we've been kicking the can around because we've been busy with some other things, but we're going to have our first upcoming guest sometime here in the next few weeks. We just got to work out the specifics. I've been texting back and forth this evening, but one Mountaineer fans might be familiar with, one that Owen Schmitt and Jed Drenning might be familiar with, one Richard Allen Rodriguez will be our first.
Mr. Hold the Rope himself. Yes.
The old ball coach.
Yeah. So that'll be fun.
I think I still have a Hold the Rope t-shirt somewhere. I might have to go look for that for the
Rich has done a number of guest spots on different platforms, but something tells me with Owen and I ganging up from two different directions, we've got enough ammo.
I think I'm literally going to intro that episode, and I'll do a couple sponsor reads, but I'm just going to sit back and watch you guys BS for however long it lasts. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, a couple pieces of big news there for you as we approach the end of June here. We're pumped to have Skylar on board. Scary car accident with him and his wife, and I think his dad as well too. So all the best to them as they take some time to recover. But you'll be hearing from Skylar. He'll be bringing I think a lot of knowledge to us here. He's got a nice brand built for himself already.
Yeah.
And I think he's kind of like me in the sense that he can wear a lot of different hats. So it'll be nice. The weeks when we have stuff going on, sometimes he'll just be behind the scenes. Maybe other times he'll be hosting and filling in and stuff like that here when we're all getting pulled in our different directions. So yeah, we're really pumped to have Skylar as part of this. And again, all the best to him and his family as they recover from that car accident. Last topic before we get out of here. And before we jump into that, actually, real quick, again, a final thank you to our friends at Fortis for roof performance and financial security guaranteed. Visit fortis.us ITG.com. Jed, an interesting one to wrap this up. You sent Owen and I wanted us to just kick this around for a minute. You sent Owen and I a text message. I Bleav it was from the Maryland head coach, if I'm correct. Talking about NIL and how things have changed in college sports and all that. And I think basically his quote was, we just invested all this money into facilities. The kids don't care about that anymore. They'd get dressed in a trash can if we just gave them a $25,000 check.
That's
right? Something like that. So the question is, I mean, how much, and I don't even know if it's a question, but it really just, I think, speaks to, maybe it's more of a statement of how for so long college athletics were a facilities race. Yeah. An arms race, a facilities race. Who's got the best practice facility? Who's got the best locker rooms? Who's got the best stadiums? Who's got the best recovery and training facilities and all these different things? Now it's just, hey, he's obviously exaggerating there a little bit. I don't think the kids at Maryland want to get dressed in a trash can. I think that still matters to them a little bit, but it speaks to how quickly this game can change.
Yeah, for a number of years, I've had these conversations, sometimes off the air, sometimes on the air with folks like Caridi and Coach Wallace, and we've said similar things to this, like when the NIL became more and more mainstream, because it used to be that the key metric in forecasting recruiting success was cranes. How many cranes do you have outside your facility? Yep. If you don't have cranes, you're going to be left behind. But NIL, you could see it coming. It was going to somehow, some way change that. So you're going to have kids with stuffed pockets playing in caves and being happy about it, right? And look, resources are limited even with the blue bloods. They have to decide what they're going to do with their money. Now, you can squeeze a little more out of those turnips if you're a blue blood, but at the same time, you have to decide, what's this distribution going to look like? How much of this, because most of it used to go into facilities, almost the vast majority of the lion's share of this money used to go into facilities because that's how you sold the kid. That was part of your brand equity. And every time they would poll these recruits, and you know this, time after time after time, that was one of the things that ranked toward the top of the list were, what level of facilities would I be playing in as a member of this football program? And what Coach Loxley's point was at Maryland, I mean, here's a full quote. I feel like I've got my legs cut from underneath me. Now, bear in mind, to give some context, they paid the king's ransom for facility upgrades. And of course, all this was in motion already for a number of years. And now they have these high-end, high-tech facilities. And his point is, but NIL's kind of cut us out at the knees with that. He says, I feel like I've got my legs cut from underneath me because my strength in recruiting isn't some slick salesman job. It's built on the longevity of relationships. And now the way the college landscape is with NIL, the transfer portal, everything is pretty much transactional, and relationships have kind of gone out of the window. So there's some merit to that. Now, the question is, there's a lot of merit to that. The question is, who will be able to strike that biggest balance? We just talked about what an attractive basketball job this is. Well, part of that is because we're getting our ducks in a row from an NIL standpoint. Part of it is we're in the Big 12 conference, but it also doesn't hurt, guys, that we just upgraded in recent years our practice facility, and it's one of the better in the country. Okay, and that's both with basketball and with football. Now, when you are able to say unequivocally you're one of the best in the country, like when you talk to some recruits who travel to Notre Dame on the football front and some of the blue bloods on the football front, and they visit West Virginia, they walk away impressed with the level of West Virginia's facilities. It is among the best in the country. Mm-hmm. We've all been in it, right? So we can speak to that. But the problem with that is you don't stay best in the country for long. It changes. It's pretty dynamic. It changes pretty quickly. So
it's like you're the highest paid quarterback in the NFL for a year, and then the next person's up and gets a few more $1 million than you.
Same with this stuff in terms of the facilities. So my question is, the arms race used to mean that you might be the best or among the best, but it was going to last 6 or 12 months. Does NIL impact it in such a way that now maybe it's good for 3, 4, 5 years that you are among the best, because that slows down the progress of all these innovations on the facilities front? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that it means while you're still among the best in the country, you need to strike while the iron's hot. You're trying to put some NIL packages together and attract talent. Well, right now, you also still have, it's not 2, 3, 5 years in the future, it's right now. You still have a facility that both in basketball and in football can be sold. So you need to make the most of that. But it's going to be very fascinating to see. And Loxley's quote, kids that get dressed in a trash can for 25 grand. I'll tell you right now, Owen, you and I both played with some kids who would do that. There's no doubt in my mind.
Oh.
And they do it with a smile on their face. They
And
don't care about the trappings or what's around them. They're not
these
caught up
kid-
in all that.
And to like what you just said, we have those facilities right now. So right now, you could straight up say, what team right now is paying all their athletes?
Yeah.
How many are? You know what I mean?
Probably not
Yeah.
many. Yeah.
Not many.
Not many at all. Okay. So if you get on that boat and just here's our budget of we're gonna pay him 10, 15,000. This is or we're gonna work whatever the number is.
Yeah.
Who cares? Like he said 25,000. I don't even think it would take that much. I think it's just going to be something up front. You know what I mean? That's the currency is the exchange now. That's what the kids want.
Yeah.
I'm going to school to play football for money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm going to play for money. That's
Well, you do have some of these trusts, like I think it was the Texas Tech. They have a couple of trusts, but one of theirs was trying to put some deal together where they were offering every scholarship kid X amount of money. Texas, of course, had this deal with their top 15 or top 20 offensive linemen on the depth chart. But so that's kind of where some of this is heading. And
That's
it's going to
where
reach
it's
a
gonna go.
point.
It's good.
Somebody's going to win a bunch of games.
It has
It's a very
to go
outdated
there.
facility. That's going to
It
happen.
has to go there, or you'll never get the quality of kids, especially for a team like us. We're going to have to pay to get those. Hey, listen, you don't have to pay a crap load of money for some blue collar, hardworking, good old boys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You make sure their pockets are full so they can spend some money on beer and have a good time. I'm telling you right now, you're going to buy yourself a decent, tough ass program.
At what point is somebody going to win a bunch of games? At what point is the dark horse? In other words, this year it was TCU. Okay. There's going to be, in my estimation, a TCU at some point in the coming years where you find out there's going to be a bunch of backstories behind, wow, their facilities are among the worst in their conference. Because all they've done is funneled all their money into the NIL.
Yeah.
And look at these facilities. They're going to have camera crews in there talking about how outdated, crazy, and bad they are. Yeah. Don't you think at some point that's going to happen? Because not everybody's going to be able to strike the balance that the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, they're not going to have deep enough pockets to keep their facilities just so, okay, very respectable and toward the top, but also funnel money toward the players. Some programs are going to have to make the decision. Yeah. I want the kid.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. I think we're kind of ahead of that right now. Obviously, we didn't get our ROI probably back on what we've spent on them. You know what I mean? We were talking about that, in previous episodes or whatnot. But I mean, like you said, Jed, while we're here and now, while we have some of the best among, why not take a chance? We got a brand new guy at an AD. Maybe I don't know how outside the box thinking he wants to get, but he has the potential of basically changing up the landscape of how that even works.
He's talking about wedding receptions in the Coliseum, wedding receptions at the state.
Can we
get some concerts at Mountaineer Field?
Yeah. Why not?
Can I get Zach Bryan at Mountaineer Field?
Look what San Diego State's
Can I get Tyler Childers at Mountaineer Field? I mean, what are we doing here? Can I get the Grateful Dead at Mountaineer Field? Okay, that might be a little bit too much to ask, but I mean,
be a sellout.
You're absolutely right. Listen, I know I've used this quote on this podcast before. In my other radio hosting job, my full-time job, I use this at least 2 or 3 times a year. It's the Brad Pitt in Moneyball, right? Billy Beane, the Oakland Athletics GM, when he's pitching this new idea of using analytics, and all of his scouts are looking at him like he's crazy. Why are you doing this? He puts his hands up and he says, adapt or die. I mean, if you could sum up, I think, being successful in sports, adapt or die are probably the 3 words that would be at the forefront of that list. You can't control how much college football has changed over the last few years. You just can't. But what you can do is you can adapt.
And to your point, Wes, what
those who are at the forefront of that are going to have the success.
Even if we took Bob Huggins $4 million and did what I said,
you're really concerned about this $4 million. They're going to have to pay the next head coach or the player coaches something.
What happens if we did it and won next year? Well, then Kansas comes back with $10 million the year after that. So it's just going to continue.
You gotta beat. You gotta
find another way.
It's like It's like Rich Rodriguez, right? He was ahead of the curve, and then everybody else caught up, and then you got to continue to evolve and adapt and do all these different things. But yeah, that's one thing that I've liked so far about Ren Baker. It's obviously still very early in his tenure, and man, does he have some big decisions on his plate right now all of a sudden that are going to shape the future of the men's basketball program. But he does seem to be more willing to be forward thinking, to be progressive, to be adaptive to this new climate, whatever word, whatever label you want to use there to throw on.
Got to make money, man.
You got to make money. You got to adapt. And, as Bob Dylan once said, fellas, the times, they are a-changing.
They are changing.
That'll do it for this edition of ITG. This was fun. We touched on a bunch of different topics here. Make sure everyone's reaching out to Skyler, wishing him well with his recovery. We're excited to get him in the fold. And yes, we will have Rich Rodriguez for you here pretty soon in the coming weeks here on ITG. Finally, as we close, as always, the one thing we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast, ITGfootball.com. On social media everywhere, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at In the Gun Podcast is where you find us there. For Jed Drenning and Owen Schmitt, I'm Wesley Uhler. Thanks for listening. As always, everybody, we'll talk to you next week. You've been In the Gun.